Goldilocks, offering smart security systems to homes and businesses. Call Goldilocks at 708-889-5600.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft. OpenAI could use more energy than Britain or Germany in 5 to 8 years. One company, more juice than entire nations. Mario Nafal commenting on the discussion about the energy demands of the coming AI, or some respects already here, AI revolution. The AI boom isn't going to strain the grid, it's already bending it. Europe's net zero plans were built for a world where data centers were background noise, not industrial scale power vacuums with GPUs sweating like steel mills. The UK wants to lead decarbonization. Germany wants to phase out fossil fuels. Great slogans until your competitors are burning terawatt hours to train models that make your productivity targets look like children's homework. And the news last week, Elon Musk, I can see a path to doing 300 gigawatts per year within 8 years. On that line, that's Elon saying the quiet part. The future belongs to whoever builds monstrous amounts of new energy. Fast, nuclear, solar, storage, whatever can survive contact with reality. Europe's climate strategy won't be decided in Brussels or Berlin. It'll be decided by AI compute curves and whoever builds the next generation of power supply. If the continent can't match that pace, it won't save the planet. It'll just outsource emissions and import the innovation later. This isn't an energy debate anymore. It's an arms race. For reaction to those statements and more, pleased to be joined, as always, by Bjorn Lomborg, president of the Copenhagen Consensus think tank, author of Best Things First. Bjorn, thanks for joining us, as always.
Hey, Dan. It's good to be here.
So what do you think about those observations about this arms race for energy, which will decide who is going to, or which are going to be the growing dynamic nations and which are not?
Well, I certainly think there's a lot of truth to this. So fundamentally, for a long time, a lot of righteous thinking people forgot about the idea that cheap, reliable energy has been the backbone of industrialization for the last 200 years. And you can't run a data center just like anything else on just solar and wind, because what do you do when the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing? So you need something that is reliable. With that, so I think the AI is a great way to get people to wake up and realize, oh my goodness, we actually need to focus on getting more reliable electricity and energy in general. But we should also just there's a little bit of faddishness to this. So the International Energy Agency just came out with their report a week and a half ago, and they estimate the world is going to need an enormous amount of more electricity. 10% of that increase is going to come from AI. So I think it's a great way to get people to think about this, but there's plenty of other things you need for both electricity and more energy, because remember, again, energy is what lifts people out of poverty.
100%. The recent confab in Brazil, where Gavin Newsom was doing photo ops, that one. And Nigeria shall lead the way. The Nigerian representative telling all these Western European dandies, quote, "We will not be in support of any climate change implementation response that would lead to our sudden economic contraction and heightened social instability." That seems like a perfectly sensible statement of principle, one that I would think that the entire world would nod in assent, but Europe still seems to be confused on the topic.
Yes. And remember, not just Nigeria, which of course is important, and they're home to several 100 million people, and we certainly want them to industrialize and get richer. But this is also true for the world's second largest country and by far the biggest emitter, China. Yeah. They continue to use, they use more coal than all other nations in the world together. And while they're out there telling everyone else, oh, you know what, you guys ought to go net zero, and actually sooner than you've planned, because that's important for the climate, they're just industrializing, and you can't blame them. And everybody else are doing the same thing. What we're witnessing is a lot of people who are clearly well-intentioned, but have little conversation with reality. And we see that here in Europe, where you're seeing Germany being deindustrialized. Germany is now down to industrial production of 2005. And that's not a good sign. That basically means you're ending up just being either a museum or a service industry, certainly not one, as you also pointed out in the intro, that can run data centers for the future. That's not how you grow rich, and that's not how you're going to win elections. Eventually, people are going to tire of these arguments, of this obsession just with climate. Yes, climate is a problem. Yes, it's one of the many things we need to fix in the 21st century. But to most people, this is just not the most important thing, not to that Nigerian that you just quoted either.
Well, Germany is a cautionary tale on a number of fronts. Energy policy is one of them. So immigration policy is another, but we'll save that for a later discussion. But this piece in Zero Hedge recently, in North Rhine-Westphalia alone, only 10 out of 396 cities and municipalities could present a balanced budget in Germany. So you have exactly what you said. You have the welfare state costs skyrocketing at the same time as production is declining, and that's a recipe for an economic catastrophe. That's what Germany's tracking for.
Yes, and honestly, that's where a lot of rich countries are tracking for. And again, the argument here is, in some sense, a lot of people are saying, well, the planet is burning, we need to do something. Well, first of all, it's not the end of the world. It's a problem. But secondly, for rich countries to say, we've got to do something, well, the something is going to be a very tiny bit. All of the emissions from the rich countries in the rest of the 21st century is going to be about 13% of the total emissions. Most of the emissions are going to come from China, India, Africa, Brazil, Indonesia, so on. All of these countries that want to get out of poverty and get to be where we are today. So the notion that we somehow can go with less and see our own nations being dismantled and then somehow help the world survive is just misguided. This is not about changing emissions in Germany or indeed in the U.S. It's about changing emissions in China and India and Africa.
It's interesting what's happening in the Northeast in America. Very quietly, Kathy Hochul, she's the governor of New York. She approved a natural gas pipeline opposed by the climate lobby. And last week, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, pulled Pennsylvania out of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is a dozen or so states in the Northeast. It's a sort of a cap and tax program. It involves taxing CO2 emissions on fossil fuel power plants, so they can spend the revenue, the states can, on green climate gambits. So two Democrats, Hochul and Josh Shapiro, ever so quietly walking away from some of these policies that they know would be disastrous for their states.
Yeah, of course. And you're seeing this across the world. Remember the Prime Minister of Canada? He used to be one of the chief proponents of climate action, and now he's very much an all of the above, and looking at getting more liquid pressurized gas for Canada to sell for the rest of the world. We're seeing this in Europe as well, where I don't know if you know or remember, but Europe was supposed to outlaw the gasoline-driven car by 2035. And now that date is approaching, and people are really, well, actually, no, maybe we shouldn't do that. And so you're getting this sort of sense in which it's okay to make promises, but you don't really want them when they start hurting. And I think that's the exact point. We're not actually fixing climate by making nice-sounding promises, spending trillions of dollars, and then abandoning them when it starts to really hurt. What we need to do is to focus on innovation. Imagine if we could get fourth-generation nuclear to be cheaper than fossil fuels. Everyone would switch to these fourth-generation serially produced small modular reactors, and that'd be amazing for the world. This is the kind of innovation that you need. Focus on the things that will fix the future rather than telling everyone, I'm sorry, we're going to make it really expensive so you stop using fossil fuels.
And those trillions spent just in the last decade in furtherance of the lofty goals of the Paris Agreement have achieved exactly what when it comes to emissions?
We can't tell in the international data, which tells you a lot. So if you look at the decarbonization rate of the world, so remember, the world has always gotten more effective at using carbon in at least the last half century, probably the last 100 years. So we've slightly declined. It declined before Paris. It declines exactly the same rate after Paris as well. So what that tells you is there's lots of people who made many, many claims, and we clearly, as you say, probably spent more than $10 trillion in climate policy, yet we cannot see any change in the actual outcome of the world. And that tells you it's all been for naught. So we should do something that's smarter.
The where do you think we are with respect to quote unquote alternative energy in terms of its development and ability to compete without massive subsidies? I'm sort of with Chris Wright, the energy secretary. I don't like this all of the above. I like the whatever works. I think that's a better way of thinking about it. And so I don't have any particular preordained distribution of where our energy should come from. But if there's innovation that is a cleaner energy and it has the same cost effectiveness in terms of delivery of power, then okay, I'm open-minded on the topic. So where are things like solar and wind today? Is there demonstrable progress for those sources of energy?
So the real problem with solar and wind is they're cheap when they run, but they're infinitely expensive when they don't. And so people love to say, oh, solar is the cheapest form of energy. Well, in many places, that's probably true, especially if it's a sunny place, but only when the sun is shining. And most people want power 24/7. As we started out talking about the AI centers, they need power 24/7. You can't have your AI go down with the sun sets, right? So the problem here is these are nice additions. So they work, for instance, in California for the first 10%. When there's lots of sun, it produces a lot of electricity, but that's also where people use the most air conditioning in the middle of the day. That's a great combination. So you get electricity almost for free when the sun is out. That's a good idea. But imagining that you can somehow run your entire society or most of your society on solar and wind is probably just an illusion. Remember, my native Denmark is actually the country with the most solar and wind. We get 70% of our electricity now from wind. But that's only possible because it's right next to Norway and Denmark. Right next to Norway and Sweden, that has lots and lots of hydropower. So they basically run the water when the wind is not blowing, and then when the wind is blowing, you get pretty cheap electricity. But the problem is that only works for very few nations and a very specific setup. And even then, you end up with electricity prices that are some of the highest in the world. So this is not, in general, a good idea. Solar and wind will probably be a nice addition. It's never going to be the main part of our energy. And people love to say batteries, but just remember, you need batteries to the extent of about 3 months storage. A new paper shows in the U.S. Right now the world has storage for about 5 minutes. If you were actually going to build all these batteries, it would cost about a third of U.S. GDP just for the U.S. every year. So, no, that's not going to happen.
All right, we'll stick with the old reliables then. That sounds like a plan. Bjorn Lomborg, president of the Copenhagen Consensus think tank, author of Best Things First. Bjorn, thank you as always. Happy Thanksgiving.
Good to talk to you.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Imagine spending your holiday season with family.